Okay, I'm back now. See how this yeast is starting to bubble? That means it's working. It's doing its thing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pour this in my mixer. I have the paddle thing on here now. Now I'm going to use the mixer to show you this. You can also hand knead. This recipe calls for, it's just to make 1 loaf of bread, and it calls for a teaspoon of salt. Just a teaspoon. So here's my teaspoon. So I'm going to put that in. Kind of shake it off so I don't have more than a teaspoon. Pop that in, and we're going to start with 2 cups of flour. My flour dipper is a cup, so I know that when I have it full like that, it's a cup of flour. Now bread, you have to get it according to humidity anyway, and this is a humid day, so it's not as precise as some other recipes. So I'm going to start with 2 cups. It's going to get noisy, and we're going to get that mixing. Just to kind of get it going. Now, some recipes will have you, getting a spatula, will have you let this dough and flour and yeast sit and activate for a little while. A challah dough is like that. It's a Jewish braided sweet bread, and it is absolutely delicious. It's a good base for cinnamon rolls. But this is a basic white French bread recipe that my grandma always made. And it's just flour, water, and salt and yeast. A little bit of sugar for the yeast. So I'm just going to keep adding flour a little at a time. Now, if I had this on high, the flour would fly everywhere. And you do want to pay attention to your recipe. This one calls for 5 cups of flour. I've put 4 in. And I'm going to let it go. See how it's kind of lumpy right now? It's going to start getting stretchy. And that means the gluten's been released. And the stretchier it is, the better it is. So, looking pretty good. The thing I'm going to need to do is switch from this paddle to this dough hook. And then that is going to knead the bread for me. Now I could do it by hand, and I'll post another video on that in case you don't have a cool mixer like this. If you don't have a mixer, you're going to mix all this with a spoon in a big bowl until it's well mixed and you can handle it, and then you're going to put it on a surface with flour and start folding the dough over and kneading it. I'll show you the motion for that kneading when we do another step of this and I'm handling the dough. So see how stretchy it is now? So that gluten is releasing. That is really important for your texture of your bread. So I'm taking my thing out and get that dough off. This is hard to do while I hold my camera, so I'm going to set my camera down for just a minute so I can scrape this. I'm still here. I'm scraping off my paddle. I'll promise I'll get better at making videos, but you'll learn from it. Alrighty. There we go. Now I'm putting this hook on. I'm also going to use my spatula to scrape down and get all that dough down inside. Okay. And I have a plate over here that I'm setting my gooey stuff on, so it's not all over my counter. It just makes cleanup easier. Now my mixer, the number 2 is the motor setting for kneading bread. The reason for this is so that you don't burn up your motor. You see how that looks a little different? Put a little more flour in. It's going to take it a little bit to just start incorporating it. This is really boring, isn't it? punch that all down in there. Usually what I do is I just do other things in the kitchen while this thing does its little job without me. So, you can see how it's slowly incorporating all that flour. Yeah. And it's not sticking to the sides. Pretty cool, huh? And then once it's not so sticky, see now it's sticking to the sides again. That means it needs more flour. Now I'm probably at my 5 cups. It just needs more. It's a really humid day. And you just go by look and feel. So it'll get to where it's just a ball of dough and it's not sticking to the sides anymore. So it's kind of changing. I'm going to stop it and push all this together. Absolutely, if you have a mixer like this, do not stick this down in there while it's mixing. I mean, I think you guys can figure out the physics of that. It's going to spin it all over the place and maybe take your hand with it. Alrighty, get in there. Still kind of sticky, but my hand, it doesn't pull any or very much dough away with it. So I'm going to let it knead some more and get that flour incorporated. I start noticing stickiness on the sides. I'll add a little more flour. It's really not that complicated. And the dough is pretty resilient. You're not going to ruin it. It's kind of flopping apart. It'll pull back together. Looking pretty good. This is still sticky. See how it's sticking to my hands? So it's not ready yet. If you're doing this by hand, you just keep doing it until the flour's incorporated, it's nice and smooth, and it's not sticking to your hands anymore. You hear how the motor's having to work? You can't do this with a little hand mixer. You will destroy your mixer. So you have to have one of these KitchenAids to do it, or do it by hand. This is how I learned to do it. My grandma taught me to make bread. I think I told you guys that. I think I was about 10 or 12. And I loved making bread. Oh, look at that. It's not sticky anymore. So what I can do now, pull this out, pull this off. Much easier when you're not one-handed. There's a little dough stuck on there. It's still a little sticky around the bottom. I probably could have let it go a tiny bit longer. What I'm going to show you now, though, is see how it's nice and I can stick my hands in it and I don't get it. There's a little on my hands, but it's not terrible. That's how you want it. Just get my thing. I'm going to come over here. Now, that's what you want it to look like. If I was kneading it by hand, I'm going to get some flour and show you how I would do that. You would make sure your counter's clean, and mine is. You'd put flour down. you'd put a piece of dough down. There we go. And basically, with both hands, I have one hand on a camera here, you set it down. More flour, sorry. Put flour on it. Push and push and push, and you're basically, this is kneading the dough. And you do this with both hands. It's actually quite satisfying. It's a lot of work, but it is fun to do. And this is how I made bread growing up. We did not have KitchenAid. So we eventually did, but my mom is a great cook, and my dad always made sure she had all the kitchen supplies she needed to make him wonderful things. So, smart man. So now all I gotta do is set this in this pan and let it raise for at least an hour. It needs to get double. Sorry about all this spinning around. Putting a little oil in the bottom of the pan. Putting the dough in, kind of coating it around. There it is, so it doesn't stick. And then I've got a towel that doesn't have a lot of fuzz on it, like this, kind of almost a cheesecloth. Today is a chilly, not too chilly, but it's not super warm in my house. So I am going to set my oven to warm. Well, okay. I will lower this rack. And I'm just going to set this inside. Notice I used the same bowl I mixed it in. Okay, here we go. Setting that inside. Now this is the key. This is going to beep when it gets up to that 170 degrees, which is a warm mode on the oven. The minute it hits that, I'm going to turn the oven off. You do not want to let it in there at a constant 170. You're just doing that to get the oven a nice warm place. And then once it's warm, you're going to turn the oven off. On mine, I just hit cancel, but I got to let it get warmed up. And then it's going to sit in there, and I'll set a timer. I'll check it in about 45 minutes to an hour. When it's doubled, we punch it down, and I'm going to do another video for that, and we'll take the next steps. But that was the first step. This has been 13 minutes, and it was actually slower than it would have taken me if I wasn't trying to video it and explain it. So literally maybe 5 to 10 minutes start to finish to get it into the oven to raise. So it's not as time consuming as it might seem. Now, if I'd hand kneaded it, it would have taken me longer, but that might be more fun too. I'll see you guys later.